going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. So we're going to do a little experiment here, which I'm sure there's a lot of people that are wondering this very thing. Can you take brass, which is copper, it's mostly copper mixed with other metals, and use the electrochemistry, Home Depot bucket method, purification method, whatever, and extract the copper and leave all the other metals at the bottom? And is it worth doing in the first place? That's a really good question, because our end goal is to take something like this, an absolute mess, and turn it into that, something beautiful and pure. Look at that brownie back. Does this look like a brownie back? No, not really. It looks pretty horrifying. That looks amazing. That's a nice copper bar. But this, look how cavernous and deep and just gross it looks. That is a brass bar. Although there is copper pipes and brass shower valves, it was all just kind of thrown into one. And you can see I drilled a little hole for the wire. And that's brass. That's yellow. That is yellow as it gets. And then I have these, which are very, very impure copper bars. I drilled a hole in that one, and that is orange. If you need a side-by-side, here you go. Orange. Yeah, you can see the difference right there. One's orange, one's yellow. But brass is mostly copper, so we should be able to extract that copper, leaving the other metals behind. And from my experience, the more pure the copper is that you're sticking into the purification system, the faster it happens. It'll happen in like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. There's not a huge pile left behind, and it's very easy to filter out the fluids and get everything clean and reset it up. The more impure the bar is, the longer it takes. It might take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, for the same size bar. And it leaves a massive pile behind at the bottom, which can cause shorting problems, because it is metal at the bottom of the bucket. It's just in dust, and it can cause shorts. So that's the other thing. Is it worth doing? Am I going to have to clean the bin out so many times that it's just like not worth it? Because as it is, I set up 2 bars like this. I let them go for 2, 3, 3.5, 4 weeks. As soon as they are as dissolved as I can get them, I pull them out, I filter the buckets out, and I set 2 new ones up. And it's like, it's not a huge deal, besides checking on the fluid level every single day and checking the voltage and adjusting it accordingly. Otherwise, you don't really need to touch it. So we're going to go, we're going to stick 2 of these in one and 2 of these in the other. You know what I mean? That way we can see like a clear difference. See how long these take versus these ones. And see, is it worth doing? Let's go clean out the pits and set them up. Alright, we got the copper bars going in there. And then here is the brass bars. Working on filling this one back up right now. I got as much off the wires as I could without going crazy. And we're going to let these rip. Alright, well, I've had the 2 brass bars that I had going for about a week, and I think I just destroyed this pit. I think I absolutely destroyed it. You see the water? The water is clear. There's a little bit of blue at the bottom, but it has sunk to the bottom. And it's bubbling, and we're getting really weird growth after a week. I mean, look at that. Ugh! What the hell is that? That ain't copper. Ugh. And the pile at the bottom is massive. But after a week, I harvested it, and there was copper on there, but it was just covered in mud, and it was just like weird. So I put it in here. This will get remelted into copper bars, and we'll send it through there again. But you can see, I mean, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but you see that? The fluid is clear, like drinking water, and the blue has settled down to the bottom. So I don't think this is going to work. But over here, we have really impure copper bars. And it almost, I mean, we've got a lot of stuff flaking off, hitting the bottom. It still looks blue, but it does look like there is a small layer of water just on the top. I might have to add more copper sulfate to this. But if we pull these crystals out, look at those. Those are beautiful. Beautiful crystals. Alright, well, we have something interesting happening here. Even this one, which these are just really impure copper bars, I can see at the very top, like it's clear. And the blue has sunken down just ever so slightly. Like I can see the blue. Yeah, there's about an inch of clear water on the top, and then from there down is blue. And then this one, there's like an inch of blue left at the bottom. The rest is water. And yeah, this is a mess here. That's not good. Alright, so now that we tried that, and we got our results, what exactly is happening? I think I know. So if you think about, first off, what are we putting in there? This is what we've been putting in there. You know, this is copper pipes, wires, soldered fittings, and occasionally a tiny piece of brass. If it was stuck on a pipe or something, I chuck it in. You know what I mean? And over a few bars, it's not a big deal. Right? You can see this bar is very clean. Very clean. Obviously, I try to scoop out some of the impurities when I'm melting the bar, but you never get it all. But this is a very clean copper bar. It is not pure, but it is clean. And never had a problem cycling these through that system. I never had to add more copper sulfate. All I added was distilled water. As the water level dropped, distilled water, distilled water, distilled water. Never in months and months and months have I had to add more copper sulfate. But now, all of a sudden, we're getting a different result, right? Because we put 2 brass bars in, and it sounded good, right? In the beginning, I'm like, well, you know, copper or brass is mostly copper, right? With just some other impurities that I don't see any reason that the impurities wouldn't fall to the bottom and the copper would be sucked out. Sounds good, but I think what's happening, and I can see it because this bar, I threw a couple of big chunks of brass in this one. It is copper. It is mostly copper because you see that drilled hole? That's that copper orange color. Same as we have here. That little drilled hole, that is copper. If I scratch these, they're going to look the same. But this one has a lot more impurities in it. And I think what's happening is, if you think about the cycle, the whole cycle that's happening in those buckets, you have your impure copper hanging off of a wire into the copper sulfate solution, which is basically copper floating around in the fluid. And then you have a wire that the crystals are growing off of. And what's happening is the copper with the electricity and everything, it's slowly eating and dissolving the bar, and it's pulling pulling copper out of the bar and it's going into the fluid. And then that fluid, the copper is being pulled out of the fluid and it's growing on the wire. And it's a cycle and it just keeps going around and around and around, right? And literally, you could do this for, if your copper bars are pretty clean like this, you could do it for a year straight and never have to add more copper sulfate into the fluid. Never. It just keeps pulling what it needs out of the bar into solution, and then it grows on the wire. But clearly, with the brass bar that we put in there, what's happening is it cannot pull enough copper out of that brass bar fast enough to replenish the fluid. So what's happening is all of the copper that's in the fluid is just going right to the wire. So it's sucking it right out of the fluid, and it's not being replenished fast enough because the bar can't dissolve fast enough to pull enough copper out. And that's why I got really big crystals at the bottom and next to nothing at the top, because that fluid it just kind of concentrated towards the bottom, and it was just water at the top. And then these really, really impure bars, I do think 100% we'll be able to get these bars to fully dissolve. I see no issues. Because, yeah, I already did one harvest, and I got perfect, clean, nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, perfect, clean copper crystals. Harvested it, set it back up, added more water. But then I was paying attention, with the flashlight, and I saw just a little bit of clear water just floating at the top. So I think because of how impure this is, we're running into the same problem, but there's a fix. So I think instead of adding, I think it's still doable. So instead of adding just distilled water, I just mixed up a 1 gallon jug of distilled water, and I just added some copper sulfate to it. So as the water level drops, I'm just going to top it up with the copper sulfate solution. And that should keep enough copper in the fluid to finish, the reaction, chewing this bar down, getting all the impurities to drop, pulling the copper out, and growing on the other side. So, I mean, I just did that. I topped it up with copper sulfate, pulled the crystals out. I mean, they're clean. So, I mean, if that's what I have to do, is just add a little copper sulfate for the really, really nasty bars, so be it. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal. I got one $30 bag of copper sulfate, I don't know, like a year ago, and I still have it. I've been slowly using it here and there. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was a fun experiment. But the brass bucket, unfortunately, I shut it down, and I'm not starting it back up because I have to move in 2.5 weeks. Hopefully. So I'm just gonna leave it. I'm probably gonna start pulling it apart, cleaning it out. Everything in that brass bucket is gonna get deleted. I want to put a fresh bar, fresh copper sulfate, fresh wire. I do not want a chance contaminating, the pure copper crystal that we have to make bars later. But I'm going to keep the really, really impure copper bars. I'm going to leave those running for the next 2.5 weeks. And hopefully, I doubt it. I think it's going to take more. I think it's going to take a long time. I think it might take closer to a month to dissolve 2 of these. Because the more impure they are, the longer it takes. And I should have known that. Because I noticed that, from the beginning. The more impure the bar is, the longer it takes. Because it's dissolving slower. And it all starts to make sense once you put all the little pieces together. But yeah, it was a fun experiment anyway, you know what I mean? But now we know. You cannot put brass in one of these systems. It will not work. So we'll have to remelt those 2 brass bars, and I'll just scrap them or something. But yeah, anyways, guys, it was a fun little experiment. Now we know. Make sure you subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. See you later.